Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Snatched Camilla, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know.
A seemingly lighthearted royal moment has sparked a wave of fascination and speculation, capturing attention far beyond palace walls. During what appeared to be a routine public appearance, young Prince Louis created an unexpected scene that instantly became the center of discussion. His playful action, interpreted by many as symbolic, has reignited conversations about loyalty, succession, and shifting dynamics within the royal family. As reactions pour in from all sides, one question lingers. Was this simply an innocent moment, or something far more meaningful beneath the surface? So what do you think? Could this be just a child's playful act, or a subtle sign of shifting royal dynamics? Let us know in the comments below. To help us uncover more hidden royal moments and bring you deeper insights, don't forget to subscribe. Crown shifted hands, in silence. The queen who was never truly chosen did not lose her place in a loud, dramatic fall, but in something far quieter, far more unsettling. If anyone is searching for the roots of today's uneasy palace atmosphere, they need only glance back to 2005, when a careful promise was written between the lines. At the time, Camilla Parker Bowles was never meant to rise beyond a softened title, a compromise crafted to calm a public still holding tightly to the memory of Princess Diana. The ceremony itself felt restrained, almost reluctant, as though the institution was testing how much the public would tolerate. Even Queen Elizabeth II kept her distance, a silent gesture that spoke louder than any official statement. The agreement was simple: stability over ambition. Yet inside palace walls, such agreements rarely remain untouched by time. Years later, in 2022, everything shifted. The throne changed hands, and with it came a rewriting of expectations. But this time, it wasn't King Charles III steering the course. Instead, a surprising force began to emerge. Young, observant, and quietly influential, Prince Louis. While the world focused on crowns and ceremonies, insiders whispered of subtle changes, decisions that seemed to bypass tradition and move toward a different kind of future. Camilla, despite finally wearing the crown, appeared to stand on uncertain ground. The title was grand, but the authority behind it felt limited. Key conversations about the monarchy's direction seemed to unfold elsewhere, often beyond her reach. It was as though she had been invited to sit at the table, but not to speak freely. The glitter of the crown masked a quieter truth. Influence was shifting, and not in her favor. At the same time, her relationship with Catherine Middleton reflected a carefully managed public image. Their interactions appeared polished, warm, and composed, yet beneath the surface there was emotional distance. The connection felt more like duty than friendship, shaped by roles rather than genuine closeness. When the cameras faded, so did the illusion of ease. Then there was Prince Louis. Though still very young, observers began noticing his growing presence within royal attention. Subtle shifts in focus around him suggested something deeper at play, not immediate power, but the quiet shaping of future influence within the royal structure. In the end, the story was never just about a crown. It was about who could hold it, who could shape its meaning, and who, despite wearing it, might never fully control it. While the media focused on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's every move, a quieter shift was unfolding behind palace doors. But what was Catherine, Princess of Wales, really building beneath her composed public image? And how did her growing influence begin to change the balance of attention within the royal spotlight? Let's reveal the surprising details behind it. Quiet rise changed everything. While headlines kept chasing the noise surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, their interviews, projects, and public revelations, something far more powerful was unfolding out of sight. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was not simply attending events or smiling for cameras. Beneath the polished appearances, she was steadily shaping influence in a way few noticed at first, but no one could ignore for long. What made it striking was how subtle it all seemed. Her work on early childhood development didn't look dramatic on the surface, Yet it quietly pulled experts, researchers, and policymakers into conversations rarely associated with royal duties. By focusing on science and long-term impact, she moved beyond tradition, stepping into spaces where real decisions were made. It wasn't about attention, it was about relevance. And in doing so, she began to stand apart. Then a turning point reshaped everything in early 2024. After surgery in London, Catherine revealed a serious health issue. Her calm, honest announcement touched people worldwide. The reaction was immediate and emotional, recalling public grief not seen since Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1997. Outside Kensington Palace, crowds gathered, leaving flowers and messages from genuine concern and connection there. Now, yet it wasn't just the public reaction that mattered. Inside the palace, her composure during such a difficult time spoke volumes. She didn't rush, didn't overexpose, and carefully protected her family while facing a deeply personal struggle. That quiet strength became impossible to overlook. By late 2024, conversations within royal circles had started to shift. Prince Louis, observing these changes closely, was said to be thinking about the future in a new way, less about titles and more about trust, resilience, and who could truly carry responsibility when it mattered most. Catherine's actions had begun to answer that question without her ever needing to say a word. At the same time, an unspoken tension seemed to ripple through the palace. Queen Camilla reportedly sensed the change, not through confrontation, but through absence. Conversations shifted, attention redirected, and influence quietly moved elsewhere. It wasn't dramatic or loud, it was gradual, like the air changing before a storm. What made this transformation remarkable was its patience. While others competed for headlines, Catherine focused on building something lasting. She turned moments of crisis into proof of character and used quiet work to earn a louder kind of respect. In the end, this wasn't a sudden takeover or a public declaration. It was something far more powerful, a steady rise shaped by purpose, resilience, and timing. And by the time many realized what had happened, the balance had already begun to change. By spring 2025, subtle but growing ripples moved through the palace corridors, hinting at a deeper struggle over control and influence hidden behind closed doors. But what exactly triggered this quiet shift? And how did Prince Louis suddenly find himself at the center of a transformation powerful enough to challenge a long-standing royal structure? Let's uncover what really happened. Prince Louis' royal restructuring. By the spring of 2025, something unusual had begun to ripple through the palace corridors. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. The whispers weren't about public ceremonies or grand appearances, but about something far more powerful: control. Behind closed doors, where influence quietly defines legacy, a shift was unfolding, and at the center of it stood Prince Louis, unexpectedly reshaping a structure that had long seemed untouchable. What made this moment so striking was not noise, but silence. No official statements, no grand announcements from Buckingham Palace, only a steady pattern of changes that seasoned royal watchers immediately recognized. Invitations to key meetings began to look different. Long-standing routines were adjusted, and most telling of all, certain responsibilities, once firmly associated with Camilla, were no longer hers to carry. For years, patronages had been her domain. These were not mere ceremonial roles. They were the backbone of royal purpose, connecting the institution to charities, hospitals, and the arts. They represented decades of effort, carefully built relationships, and personal investment. Yet, almost overnight, several of these significant roles appeared to drift away from her grasp and land elsewhere. It wasn't presented as a removal, but it felt like one. To those who understood the system, it looked less like a transition and more like a quiet erasure. At the same time, access was being rewritten. Circles that had once been tightly guarded began to widen, but only in one direction. Conversations that were previously limited to a select few now included new voices, and the shift carried weight. In royal terms, being present in those rooms is not symbolic. It is power in its purest form. Prince Louis, though young, was being positioned not as a distant future figure, but as an active force in the present structure. The palace, as always, said nothing. It never needed to. Its language is action, not explanation. A change in seating at a private dinner, a new face at a strategic discussion, a different name attached to a long-held cause. These were the signals. And by mid-2025, the signals had formed a clear pattern, one that could not easily be dismissed as coincidence. Meanwhile, behind the composed exterior that the public had come to expect, Camilla was watching. Every adjustment, every reassignment, every subtle shift did not go unnoticed. Her calm presence remained, but those closest to the situation suggested that beneath it lay calculation, perhaps even resolve. Because in a world where nothing is said outright, the most powerful moves are often the ones made quietly, and the response to them, when it comes, can redefine everything. Everything appeared calm on the surface, yet behind closed doors, Queen Camilla made a move that reportedly unsettled even those closest to her. What could have pushed her to demand something so final and irreversible? And how did this single decision begin quietly reshaping the balance within the palace? Let's find out. The silence that shifted the crown. That was the moment everything changed, though almost no one noticed it at first. Behind closed doors, away from flashing cameras and polished smiles, Camilla made a move that startled even those closest to the palace. Guided, it was said, by voices like Angela Levin, she didn't ask for reassurance. She demanded certainty, not soft promises, not careful words, but something permanent, something written. Her request was simple on the surface but heavy underneath, a formal guarantee that her title, her duties, and her place would remain untouched, no matter what storms lay ahead. At a time when the monarchy was already adjusting to shifting loyalties and public opinion, it felt less like a request and more like a line drawn in the sand. She wanted protection, especially as the quiet rise of Catherine continued to reshape the royal spotlight. But the answer she received was not emotional, not loud, and not open to debate. It was controlled, distant, and final. A firm refusal delivered with professional calm. The palace, now increasingly influenced by the symbolic weight of Prince Louis as a representation of the monarchy's future, made its position clear. Nothing would be fixed in stone. The reasoning sounded careful, even reasonable. The monarchy, they explained, must remain flexible. It must adapt to public feeling, to changing times, and to the unpredictable nature of its own future. A written agreement, they argued, would limit that ability. It would tie their hands when change became necessary. What they didn't say directly, but what everyone understood was this: power within the palace must always be movable. So while Camilla could keep her title and her place in ceremonies, the deeper influence, the quiet control behind charities, decisions, and inner circles would never be guaranteed. That kind of power, they implied, could be reassigned whenever needed. A signature on paper would only complicate that. Those close to her noticed the shift immediately. There were no dramatic reactions, no public complaints, no whispered scandals leaking into headlines. Instead, something far more unsettling took its place: silence. It wasn't the calm kind. It was sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The kind of silence that carries meaning without a single word. Having endured decades of criticism and public judgment, Camilla knew better than to react in ways that could be used against her. So, she didn't. She withdrew, carefully and completely. And inside palace walls, that quiet became louder than any argument. A quiet but powerful shift has been unfolding behind palace walls, hinting at a monarchy being reshaped from within. But what exactly drove Prince Louis to embrace such a bold, stripped-down vision after 2022? And could this smaller, sharper royal circle signal a deeper transformation than anyone expected? Now let's uncover what this new direction truly means for the future of the monarchy. Louis and the royal shift. Something subtle yet powerful has been unfolding behind palace walls, and it is no longer just quiet speculation. It feels like a carefully guided transformation. Since stepping into a more visible position after the changes of 2022, Prince Louis has begun shaping a vision that is both bold and unexpected. His approach speaks of a monarchy stripped down to its essentials: fewer voices, clearer purpose, and a smaller circle that truly connects with the public. But this is not just a modern idea dressed in royal language. It is a strategy that is already changing how influence flows within the institution. Without grand announcements, the focus has shifted toward those who can carry the weight of the future. And at the center of this shift stand William and Catherine, figures who seem to balance tradition and modern life with rare ease. They are seen not just as senior royals, but as the steady bridge between an old system and a world that demands relevance. What makes this transformation more intriguing is how deliberate it appears. Reports over the past year suggest that Catherine, especially after her highly publicized recovery period in early 2024, has stepped into a role far beyond expectation. Doors that once took decades to open now seem to move aside for her with surprising speed. Speeches are sharper, appearances more impactful, and her presence increasingly central. It feels less like coincidence and more like careful guidance, as if she is being prepared for something much larger. Yet, while the spotlight grows brighter on one side, it softens on another. Camilla remains a figure of strength and endurance, someone who has faced years of public doubt and slowly reshaped her image. Her journey through the most difficult chapters of royal history, especially those tied to the lingering memories of the late Princess Diana, earned her a level of acceptance few thought possible. Still, in this new vision, she seems to represent a closing chapter rather than an opening one. This quiet repositioning carries an emotional weight that goes beyond strategy. There is a sense that history itself is influencing the present, almost like an invisible thread connecting past struggles to future decisions. The echoes of the 1990s, a time that reshaped the monarchy forever, still linger in unexpected ways. Now, with Prince Louis at the heart of this evolving direction, the monarchy appears to be preparing for a future defined not by tradition alone, but by survival, relevance, and careful reinvention. And as the balance continues to shift, one question remains: who truly holds the crown in a system that is changing from within? This story cannot be separated from the lasting shadow of August 1997 in Paris, when Princess Diana's tragic death reshaped global perception of the monarchy. But why does her presence still linger nearly 3 decades later? And how has that unresolved memory continued to influence Camilla and the royal family's image in ways that refuse to fade? Let's reveal the fascinating details behind it. Diana's echo and crown memory. This story cannot be understood without the shadow that still fills every corner of the royal family since August 1997 in Paris. Princess Diana has been gone for nearly 3 decades, yet her presence still shapes how people see Camilla and the whole monarchy. She died after a car crash in Paris, and the world reacted with real grief that never fully faded. Even today, that emotion is still the measure against which every royal is judged, whether fair or not. In early 2024, when Catherine shared news of abdominal cancer treatment, public reaction exploded with concern and sympathy across Britain and beyond. People quickly compared it to the wave of emotion that followed Diana's death, showing how deep that old memory still runs. Camilla has taken on many duties and titles over the years, appearing at state events and charity work with steady discipline. Yet public feeling toward her remains polite but distant, shaped by a history that refuses to disappear. Catherine, by contrast, is seen as warm and grounded, often putting family life and her children first in the public eye. Even Prince Louis, aware of the shifting mood around the palace, is said to understand how public affection now moves differently than before. Observers like Tina Brown have noted that the institution still behaves as if the 1990s never truly ended. The gap left by Diana was never filled, only covered with time, and now echoes through every public reaction. No matter how many speeches or appearances Camilla makes, she cannot escape that comparison in the public mind. Catherine unintentionally fills that space, not by design, but through simple connection with people who feel she understands them. From Paris in 1997 to London in 2024, the story continues to unfold under the weight of memory and expectation. It is not only about individuals, but about how a nation remembers loss and searches for new symbols of trust. Each public moment is measured against a past that refuses to stay quiet, no matter how much time passes. The royal family continues to adjust, balancing duty with a public mood that shifts quickly and often unpredictably. Behind formal ceremonies and carefully planned appearances, there remains an unspoken comparison that shapes every headline and reaction. And as years move forward, the memory of Diana continues to guide how people respond to both Camilla and Catherine. Ultimately, the monarchy exists within that memory, where every smile, decision, and appearance is filtered through what people felt in the past. Prince Louis is said to recognize this changing landscape, understanding that public loyalty is no longer automatic, but earned through honesty, warmth, and presence that feels real rather than constructed over time. Camila spent decades trying to be accepted by a royal family that never fully embraced her, only to finally step into the crown at a moment when power inside the palace was already shifting. But what quiet plans were being shaped within Buckingham Palace corridors in London, and how would they gradually reshape her influence without ever removing her name? Let's find out. The Crown Rewritten in Silence. Camilla spent half her life fighting to be accepted by a family that never fully embraced her, and after decades of patience and pressure, she finally stepped into the crown, only to discover the power around it was already being quietly reshaped. In the same palace corridors of Buckingham Palace in London, plans were forming that would soften her influence without removing her name. Prince Louis, now acting as the quiet force behind the institution in 2026, began steering decisions with a focus on survival rather than tradition, reading the mood of a public that had shifted sharply since 2022. Catherine, meanwhile, was never chasing power. She was balancing recovery, motherhood, and duty. Yet she became the figure the public instinctively trusted most, even when she avoided the spotlight. The monarchy has always survived by changing without showing it, but this time the change feels harder to hide. What looks like a routine adjustment is actually a careful redesign of influence. Camilla is not being removed or openly criticized. Instead, her role is being reduced in subtle ways, managed from behind polished statements and royal events. Prince Louis understands that the institution depends less on tradition now and more on approval ratings and public emotion. By 2024, surveys already showed stronger trust in Catherine, and that fact quietly shaped decisions inside palace strategy rooms. This shift is not driven by kindness, but by calculation. The crown is treated like a brand that must stay relevant even if it means uncomfortable choices. Camilla, once seen as controversial for years, had finally earned a measure of respect after enduring decades of criticism tied to events long before she became queen consort. Yet respect does not always equal importance in royal planning. Catherine, younger and more widely admired, is increasingly positioned at the center of public life not by ambition, but by demand. Historians would recognize this pattern. Roles adjusted, influence redirected, and power softened while titles remain intact. The royal system has done this many times, but rarely so visibly in modern media. The most difficult truth is not political, but personal. Camilla is being shifted aside after finally reaching the place she fought for, while the institution quietly prepares its next image. Prince Louis, aware of both public sentiment and internal pressure, continues to guide the monarchy toward a future shaped less by legacy and more by survival. The result is a family story that feels less like a ceremony and more like careful editing of who stands in the light in this quiet reshaping. Nothing is openly taken, yet everything is gradually reassigned, leaving only appearances unchanged for the watching world as the monarchy learns to survive in a new age. So what do you think of Prince Louis snatching Camilla's crown and handing it to Catherine? What really went down? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe.